What if the most powerful man in Britain was born in North Africa? Not a visitor, not a soldier, the emperor himself. And the decisions he made here helped shape Britain long after Rome had gone. I want you to picture York in the year 208 AD. Not the quiet historic city you see today, but a crowded military capital filled with soldiers, traders, officials and messengers moving constantly through the gates of the fortress. This was one of the most important places in the Roman Empire, because this is where the emperor chose to live. That emperor was Septimius Severus. He wasn't born in Rome, he wasn't born in Europe. He was born in the North African city of Leptis Magna, in what is now Libya. And yet, in the final years of his life, the centre of his empire shifted north, all the way to Britain. Why would the most powerful man in the world leave Rome for the edge of empire? Because Britain mattered more than we sometimes think. And the story of Severus shows us something we don't always talk about. Britain was never isolated. From the very beginning, it was part of a global world. Septimius Severus grew up in a Roman province, not in the heart of empire. But Rome wasn't built on one identity. It was built on movement, ambition, and opportunity. He rose through the Roman system step by step, first as an official, then as a military commander, and eventually as contender for the throne. When the emperor died in 193 AD, the empire fell into chaos. Rival generals declared themselves emperor. Armies marched against each other, and the entire Roman world was thrown into civil war. Severus didn't win because he was the obvious choice. He won because he was disciplined, determined, and ruthless when necessary. Once he secured power, he ruled not just as a politician, but as a soldier emperor. That meant the stability of the empire depended on the strength of its frontiers. And one frontier was more dangerous than most: Britain. We sometimes imagine Roman Britain as a distant outpost, a forgotten corner of the empire. But that isn't really true. Britain was strategically important, economically useful, and politically fragile. The northern tribes were never fully controlled. Hadrian's Wall existed because Rome knew the frontier was unstable. And when rebellion broke out in the early 200s, Severus didn't send a general, he came himself. Think about what that means. The emperor travelled across Europe and the Channel to personally command an army in Britain. That wasn't symbolic, that was serious. And here's something that's easy to forget. When the emperor arrived, Britain effectively became the centre of the Roman world. Orders came from here. Policies were shaped here. Decisions made in York affected territories stretching from Spain to Syria. Britain wasn't at the edge of the empire in that moment. It was at its heart. Severus didn't come to Britain for a ceremonial visit. He came for war. The northern tribes had resisted Roman rule for generations. They knew the land, they understood the terrain, and they avoided direct confrontation. Instead, they used tactics that frustrated the Roman army again and again. Severus responded with force on a massive scale. Thousands of soldiers marched north, rebuilding roads, strengthening forts, and pushing deeper into territory Rome had never fully controlled. This campaign was brutal. Ancient sources described forests cleared, villages destroyed, and entire communities forced back. It was not a gentle expansion of Roman order, it was an attempt to impose absolute control. And yet, despite the scale of the campaign, something unexpected happened. Severus never truly conquered the north. Instead, the campaign revealed something far more important. Britain could not simply be controlled from far away. It required direct leadership, permanent attention, and enormous resources. In 211 AD, Septimius Severus died in York. Not in Rome, not in Africa, not in the centre of empire, but here in Britain. And when he died, power passed to his sons. The future of the Roman Empire was decided in a fortress in northern England. That alone tells us how important Britain had become. But his death also left a legacy that lasted far longer than the campaign itself. Because Severus didn't just fight in Britain, he strengthened the military system, reinforced the frontier, and reshaped how Rome governed the province. His rule helped stabilise Roman Britain for decades after his death. And the idea that Britain was deeply connected to the wider world didn't disappear when Rome left. It carried on through trade, migration, and culture. When we think about early Britain, we often imagine something small and isolated, a remote island on the edge of history. But the story of Septimius Severus tells us something very different. Britain was part of a global empire. People moved across continents. Ideas travelled thousands of miles. Power didn't belong in one region or one identity. An emperor born in Africa ruled from Britain. Orders given in York affected people in North Africa, the Middle East and Europe at the same time. That doesn't sound like isolation, that sounds like connection. And this is where the story becomes really interesting, because it forces us to rethink something very simple. Who made Britain? This episode isn't just about one emperor, it's about something much bigger. The history of Britain wasn't shaped by one group of people, one region or one identity. It was shaped by movement, influence and change. Sometimes those influences came from nearby. Sometimes they came from much farther away. Severus is one of the earliest examples we have of someone from outside what we now think of as Britain having a profound effect on it. And here's something I'd really like to hear your thoughts on. When you learned about Roman Britain at school, were you ever told that an African emperor ruled from York? Or is this the first time you've heard that story? Put it in the comments. I'm genuinely interested to see how widely this was taught. It would be easy to think of this as just an interesting historical detail, but it's more than that. Because the story of Septimius Severus challenges the idea that Britain was ever culturally isolated. It shows us that Britain has always been connected to a much wider world, even in the earliest periods of recorded history. And it reminds us that the people who shaped Britain didn't all look the same, didn't all come from the same place, and didn't all share the same background. The emperor who strengthened Roman Britain, who fought campaigns here and who died here, wasn't born anywhere near it. Yet his decisions shaped this island for generations. When we think about the making of Britain, maybe we need to think a little differently. Not as a single story, not as a single identity, and not as a single moment in time. Instead, it's a long process shaped by people arriving, influencing, governing, and sometimes transforming the country completely. Septimius Severus didn't just visit Britain, he ruled it, he fought for it, and he died here. And if the first emperor to shape Britain in a major way was born in North Africa, it raises a fascinating question for the rest of this series. How many other people helped make Britain, but were quietly left out of the story? Thanks for walking a little further along the path that made Britain. If you liked it, there's a button especially for that, and I'd appreciate a click, it really helps. If you subscribe, there's a whole back catalogue of videos like this for you to discover, including this one, chosen especially for you by YouTube. Have a look, I think you'll like it. So until next time, thank you so much, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.